Hey, what's up, everybody on YouTube? This is Warren from the Rhapsody Piano Studio. I want to welcome you to today's live stream. Today, we're going to be talking about why music theory is bad for you. And I'm going to make a little disclaimer that it's not that black and white. I don't think like music theory is totally bad for you. I think just in certain instances, you're going to want to avoid it. 1 second as I do a sound check. Okay, so why you want to avoid music theory is, the times you want to avoid music theory is actually in the beginning. And part of it too is like there's this myth going around that you actually need to know music theory in order to play piano. There are situations where you're definitely going to need to learn a little bit of theory. And my personal opinion is just a very basic minimum. Because to this day, I remember all the theory classes I took in college when I was doing my music degree. 90% of them, I totally forgot everything almost, right? But a lot of it just, to me, hasn't been that much of value. But I'll talk about in the end some situations where it's actually relevant to learn a little bit of music theory. But again, in the beginning, you're gonna want to avoid it. And if you use a lot of theory in the beginning when you're trying to play piano, I actually think it's bad for you, okay? All right, so, just to kind of bust the myth that you need to know a lot of theory. It's just from my own personal experience. Ever since I started teaching in 2010, I just tested it out and to see if I could teach students to play piano without theory. And actually, I tested it out because, when I started out on my teaching journey, what happened is I try to get them to learn theory at the same time, and it was kind of like a headache for everyone involved. So I thought that's kind of been the case, right? And then, some proponents of music theory say you have to learn theory to be able to read notes and stuff like that too. That's actually not true either. If you click the link in the video description that I'll leave below, you can see the entire guide that I did all my live streams on. Basically, everything you're gonna need to know to be able to play piano. And one of those live streams, I go into how to read music. So that's another myth that you can just completely, we can totally bust today. And if you check out my Instagram, you can see the proof for yourself, right? All my social media accounts. Again, I haven't been posting a lot lately because I'm focused on this channel. But you see my students playing piano, literally all of them, they've learned to play with zero music theory. And then, of course, we're gonna talk later when I do teach them a little bit of theory. But this whole idea of why you need to learn theory, it's kind of predicated in this idea that we have to know a lot of information. We have to be well educated to be able to do something well. And I'll give you a couple examples. Okay, we're back. So where I was at was I was talking about when I saw an interview, and it was by a concert pianist, a famous Chinese concert pianist. His name was Yuni Li, and back at the time, he was pretty popular. I don't know about today, but he was doing this interview with a conductor. He was collaborating with him because they were going to do the Prokofiev Concerto No. 1 together. And I specifically remember this interview because that was the concerto I was studying at the time. I was trying to find some information, do a little bit more research because I was going to perform it. And it was really interesting, the conversation. It kind of totally changed my mind about a lot of stuff. The conductor was talking to Yuni Li, and he was like, "Oh, what do you think about Prokofiev?" And you can tell he did his homework. He knew his research and a little bit of historical background. Like, what do you think about Prokofiev? Like he did his first, piano and jury, which is like a examination thing you take in college, right? So what did you think about him not only composing this piece, but also playing it for his jury? And then to me, it was kind of shocking because what Yuni Li said back to him was, "I didn't even know he played piano." He's going to play the actual concerto and he doesn't even really know much about it. In fact, the conductor knew more about him and he's not even a piano player. So that was kind of one thing that just kind of boggled my mind. Like, what, you don't need to know a lot to be able to be good at something, right? And then a couple other examples from my personal experience in college is that I started to notice, and I kind of almost verified this in 100% of the cases, right? Maybe if it was more situations, maybe I wouldn't be so black and white about this, but literally all the music majors I met that were music education and musicology, which is the study of like music history. You can think of both of them as almost like music scientists in a way, or something like that too. What I started to notice, and I'm really not trying to talk badly of them, but all these people, they knew a lot of information, but they just were absolutely terrible at performing. And I started to understand what is going on, right? So that was the second thing. So just because you know a lot doesn't mean you're good at it. And in fact, the more I found people who were really knowledgeable about it, right? Like not too knowledgeable, but people who were really, music nerds about this stuff and could recite every historical period and things like that too. They were just really bad at playing piano or playing whatever instrument that they were playing. And I remember this one specific master class that we had where there was a visiting artist instructor, a professor from like another college. And she asked the audience, where we're all like piano majors, right? Like she would ask him, I think she asked them the question, period or something like that, right? What, his different kind of transformational periods that he went through. And this one major, he raised his hand and he completely recited the exact dates, just actually kind of left the instructor a little tongue test. She was like, yeah, that's actually totally correct, right? And this guy happened to be a piano minor with a major in, guess what? Music education. And guess what? He sucked at piano. He was really bad, okay? And it's almost a little bit of ego too. Like, and I don't think anyone would tell him that either, or maybe they didn't even realize it. He definitely didn't think so, okay? So those are, just some experiences from my real life, my own life, where I saw that just knowing a lot of theory, knowing a lot of information doesn't make you better at your craft. Now, why is music theory so bad to learn in the beginning? Well, I mean, the obvious thing is it takes time away from actual physical practice. So if you got your nose in a book and you're not playing the piano, your skills aren't going to improve. I personally believe, and I'm sure a lot of other people believe, that you learn best just through apprenticeship, if you think of it that way, just hands-on experience, trial and error. Just you learn through action, not through analysis. You can't think or analyze yourself into being a better piano player, right? And then here's another caveat, right? Too much information. I mean, I already spoke about this a little bit, but let's go a little bit deeper into this. Too much information does not make you better at what you do. In fact, they've done studies where they would get in touch with so-called experts in their field, whatever field that there were experts in. You can think politics or science or whatever, right? And these people were like expert forecasters at making predictions and things like that too. What do you think happened? Okay.
Facebook's fun.
Huh?
Facebook's fun.
Okay, that's cool. All right, we're back again. Faulty internet connections. Sorry, there's a lot of disconnections today in this live stream. So what do you think happened when they give more information to these people who are expert forecasters? Well, what happened was their confidence actually got higher and their skills and predictions actually got worse. Their forecasts and their predictions got worse. It's like the more information you gave them, because of the fact that they felt like they had a lot of information, they got cockier and they felt like, they got better at it. But the reality is the more information they gave them, the worse their skill and projection was. So think about that, right? Yeah, and in my personal experience too, when I started to teach students more theory, I also noticed too, it's like their playing got worse, right? So you can tell the pain in my voice, like you shouldn't have done that. So, back to people who really are into music theory and really believe that you need it, I think they kind of sense, or they think of it from the perspective of like engineering. But, playing piano is not like engineering. It's more like, if you think about dog training, right? Like when I got my first dog, I read every single book all about dogs possible because I had no idea what to expect. So I wanted to be prepared. But reading books about dog training is not the same thing as learning music theory to get better at playing piano, right? Because if it was like music theory, right, the dog books I would read would just be like the history of the dogs, like the breed, right? Like the information, the biology. That's not going to make you a better dog trainer. So when to actually learn theory, and I want to say quick hi to Bamad. Thanks. I don't know how to say hi in Argentina, but thanks for checking out the live stream today. So when to actually learn music theory, I think it's when you are seriously considering doing something like composition. If you want to be a composer, you're definitely going to need to know music theory. It goes into really the music. Another case might be something like, ear training. If you're like a jazz musician, right? They do a lot of lead sheets. You're gonna have to write a lot of different harmonies, right? Chord progression, things of that nature. But that's not even like the complete spectrum of music theory anyway. That's like one part. So you might just focus on harmonic progressions, right? Definitely, I think, if you're doing something like that, you need to learn that part of music theory. And also, I've never really gigged with it. I don't have a lot of professional experience, but if you became a professional musician, maybe if you're taking classical or even like jazz or something like that, or even something else, right? I'm guessing they might be able to communicate with these kind of the same words that they're using. If they're like, oh, this is a 5/6 or this is a 4/7 or something like that too. If you say that, then that might be an easier way for you guys to communicate. Okay, and also, if you become more advanced, I think you need to know a little bit, but just the basic, minimal amount, right? You don't need to go too crazy with it. Like for me, when my students get more advanced, I think basically it's just teaching them, keys, like different keys and, circle fifths and stuff like that too. But that's basically it. I don't go any further than that. Of course, my students aren't going to be professional musicians. If they were going to be professional musicians, that I might change my tactic a little bit. But if you're just going to get good at piano, if you just want to play and, develop your skill, you don't really need music theory, just a minimal amount of that. Okay. Anyways, in conclusion, avoid it in the beginning. You'll learn piano best. Almost anything else for that matter, whatever skill you're trying to learn in the beginning, you're going to learn it best without any theory. Like not any theory, but just a little bit. I'll give you one last example. So, like I have a couple students who are Cantonese, right? If I ask them like, how did you learn to be so fluent in Cantonese? They never went to formal school. They never got any training. They didn't study the grammar. The parents just spoke it at home and they just picked it up. So in that sense, I would love for you to develop getting good at piano in the same way. Use the same method, right? The theory, trust me, it's really gonna fry your brain. It's gonna be too much information for you to handle, especially in this. The problem is this kind of modern age we're living in with all this information everywhere on the internet. It's kind of overload, in my opinion. Just too much information. So I really believe in a adage that less is more, and apply that to when you're learning piano. Okay. Anyways, that's it for today. I want to thank you guys for watching. If this kind of resonated with you, if and happy practicing.